Fremont, what's going on? I was gonna do a video before I watched your video, Tyler Perry, Color Girls, and the Unseen Dynamic, and I thought I would fuse the two together. In your video, you kind of touched on the bullshit that comes about with, movies done by Tyler Perry and other related films. Um, and it fits into what I was going to talk about because it goes into cleaning up the bullshit in the black community. Um, I know you're not on Gen X. A couple of us are on Gen X now, posting videos. Yeah, I'm still on both. But over the last couple of weeks, there had been an ongoing conversation about fixing the black community, and we need pretty much how we need those who are doing well to go back into those communities and bring with them um, their financial stability and, business ownership and, I guess that template for how to do things properly, right? So instead of, the black families leaving, they should move into these communities environments so that they can bring their resources and that, there can actually be a template for other people to follow. Um, so we had a whole conversation on building and whatnot, but what a lot of the people didn't understand, and even now, a lot of people, whenever people talk about fixing the black community, what they don't understand is that in order to have a successful community, you have to do two things. And I'm sure there's more, but I'm only going to speak on two. Number one, obviously you do have to build, okay, and getting into the whole ownership, and keeping black dollars in the black community, right? So you can hire other black people, and you can sustain your community financially. You got to grow, you got to build. But at the same time, you also, and this is number two, you have to clean up the bullshit. This idea that we're going to want to build, but then we're not going to address the bullshit, it's not going to cut it. People want to compare the black community to what other communities are doing. Well, what they do is they don't allow negative behavior. Apart from building and, owning and all that other good stuff, they're not allowing negative behavior. They clean that shit up, right? Um, it's like trying to build a home on a landfill, right? It's not going to happen. You can put up a home, but over time, you're going to have a shaky foundation, right? Trash is going to start showing up underneath your dirt, and eventually your home is going to crumble. So in order to build, you have to clean up any sort of bullshit, and you have to make sure that bullshit doesn't come back, right? So, if you do have a landfill, right, and some may say right now what's going on in the black community that it is a landfill, you have to clean up the mess. Then you can build. And you have to make sure that that landfill doesn't come back, right? It's a two-part problem in my opinion. And we don't do enough to clean up the bullshit because you'll get Tyler Perry. And the fucked up part about it, excuse my language, but the messed up part about Tyler Perry is that he's recognized, as somebody, he's credited as a noteworthy person, right? But yet no one seems to understand the damage that his movies and his TV shows do. And then we want to talk about fixing the black community, what we're not doing, where we're not at, and how we're falling behind here, and this stat says we're here, and this study says we're here. Well, yeah, we're not building, but part of the problem is we have bullshit that's also going on that is preventing us from moving forward, right? And I just did a video kind of talking about Tyler Perry, and I said the biggest problem, in my opinion, is that he portrays black men as villains. And I'm not saying that he did this in Color Girls. I haven't seen it. But overall, he portrays black men to be the villains, right, across the board. But then we're supposed to be the heroes. And I talked about how he, seems to villainize black men across the spectrum. So it doesn't matter what you have going on, whether you have your PhD in drug dealing or, your PhD in philosophy. You're still a villain to black women somehow in some way, right? And this is the bullshit that we're talking about, but we don't nip it in the butt, And then we're going to turn around and talk about why we don't have X, Y, and Z, why we're not building, why is it that, our men leave the women, they go off to other communities. Like, there's a whole lot of bullshit, and people can't put the two together. So I'm sitting there having these conversations on, Gen X, and I'm listening to what people are saying, and this, that, and the third. And you had a lot of people who were optimistic about, what we have to do and how we need to fix the black community, but no one ever really touched on how to clean up the bullshit. This idea that we can somehow build but not account for the crap that's literally surrounding us, to me is laughable. What can you build on a landfill? What can you build? Literally, if people want to actually at least get me to even entertain their ideas of fixing the black community, I want to hear talk about how we're going to clean up the bullshit, how we're going to marginalize certain people like Tyler Perry. Obviously, you're never going to get rid of them, but how are we going to put them into a small little corner, right? No one is saying that we have to forever clean up the streets in the black community. Yes, there's always going to be bullshit, but how well are we going to contain it and marginalize it, just like in other communities, right? You look at the white community, and their stars and their athletes and their famous people, they're insignificant, right? Ask the average white person who Britney Spears is or what's going on in her life, and they're not going to know. But every last black person knew what happened with Chris Brown and Rihanna, right? Everybody knew about their situation. Just going back to the whole us not marginalizing the bullshit, us not putting shit where it belongs. But then we want to talk about what we need to do, how we have to build, and how black people have to do this, and how we have to mobilize. Fine. Okay. That's one part of the problem. What are you going to do in terms of part two? How are you going to clean up the bullshit that we have now? I'm not trying to live in a mansion that's on a landfill. Yeah, it may be cool for a year or two, but what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen? Slowly but surely, your foundation's going to crack, and that house is going to go. It's going to crumble because you fucked up. Excuse me, language once again, my bad. But you built your house on a landfill, and this is what you're going to get, right? And it's annoying and it's frustrating because people don't see it, especially the women. The women will walk away, and they'll, view his movies as the gospel truth. This is the narrative of my life. And they'll accept this whole idea of black men being the villain. And they'll adopt this sort of mindset that I have to steer clear of black men because black men are my biggest challenge in life. Right? It wasn't, what slavery did. It wasn't, about oppression or racism or this, that, and the third. It's somehow overcoming black men. And once again, I'm not saying that this is what went on in Color Girls because I didn't see the movie. Right? But that's the image he puts out there, and, black women eat it up. Right? And they walk away with this whole idea of black men being the villains, only to then turn around and ask where are the black men and demand that we step up and cry when we're not there or cry when we're detached. Cry when we just don't really care. See, I can understand if people just use it as entertainment, right? If Tyler Perry was nothing more than entertainment, like I said before, I can watch a film and to me it's like watching Jurassic Park. There's no difference between watching Tyler Perry and watching Transformers, right? It's just a movie. Reality, no. Fantasy, yes, fantasy. What's next? Harry Potter, right? That's how I look at it. But, it's bullshit when you have people who will take it and look at it as the gospel truth. It's bullshit when you have black men who will look at hip-hop and what it does and look at that as the gospel truth, the narrative of my life. It's just so much BS going on that it's impossible for me to even think about, quote-unquote, trying to build the black community up. Like, what are we building on? Even if we had a blueprint, even if we were ready to go, right? We have blueprints laid out. We have the funding to put up buildings, schools, homes, grocery stores, a hospital, 2 fire stations, a police department. We figured out how we were going to pay everybody, right? Everything was good to go. And it's like we have all this, but yet where we're supposed to build this utopia is on a landfill. Literally, it's on a landfill. And you have some people who feel like we can just go ahead and build on the landfill. Nope, you got to clear it out. Or you have to obviously move enough of your trash into a location or understand how to deal with your garbage and put it into its proper place. Obviously, you can never rid yourself of garbage, but you can minimalize it and put it where it needs to be. But we're not doing that. But people think we can still build. And the sad part, so let me wrap this up, the part that's most frustrating is people don't even understand the bullshit. People don't understand negative behaviors and counterproductive ways of thinking and acting. They don't understand it. They don't understand it at all. And they don't see the damage that Tyler Perry does. I guarantee you. And this has happened. This has happened. I've tried to have lighthearted conversations, about Tyler Perry, not to get too deep or, too into it. And, even with those conversations, like, people just don't get it, especially the women that I talk to. They don't understand. And like I said before, the messed up part is they look at these movies and they take them as the gospel truth. They take it as this is the narrative of the lives of black women, right? And they don't understand how in his movies he seems to have this trend as making black men out to be the ultimate villain. The villain can't be the good guy. When was Bruce Willis or Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon and Die Hard? When were they ever, in one part of the movie, the bad guy, but then they turn into the good guy? When was, Arnold Schwarzenegger the bad guy, then the good guy, except in Terminator, right? The first one he was bad, and the other four he was good. So it doesn't happen. But you see how the bullshit affects the community at large. You see how the filth translates over to the community at a minimal level, right? So what makes the black community across the board think that we can build and progress? What we have now is corrupted by the bullshit that we don't want to clean up. What we have now, the little that we have now, is already corrupt with the bullshit in the community. So our little shack on the landfill is filled to the brim with trash. Our little shack is filled to the brim with all, diapers, old Chinese food, old newspapers, but people think we can build something, right? As if we have a working example of where we can be. So, it's frustrating. I feel your concern, I feel your passion. For me, being on the younger end of the spectrum, for a lot of brothers who see the world, or at least the black community, as I do, we're at a point where we're done, T-Mont, to be real with you. We're at a point where, if it was up to us and there was like an island that we could move to, we would be trying to get to that island right now. Like, we would really be trying to get to that island on some, we're creating something brand new, right? Something brand new where we're not going to let bullshit ride. There's no excuse. There's no, this happened to me. This person wasn't there. This person lied to me. This person said this but didn't follow up. No excuse. So a lot of brothers are just like frustrated, and it's just like we would rather, just be detached from the community altogether. Now, in terms of being detached, that could mean a whole bunch of things. It can mean that, me and my family, right, move off and don't care, right? So me and my black family move off to the burbs and we move off to a white community, right, and just live our life that way. Or it can mean, brothers, just go off and live the single life. I know a lot of men that have chosen to do the whole single life, right, because as a man it's easier to do so than a woman, right? There'll be brothers that are going to go off and, I guess, marry and, date interracially and do that, sort of lifestyle. So you just have a lot of brothers who are frustrated because of the bullshit like Tyler Perry that's not identified and it's not put in its proper place. We already know what hip-hop does to black men, especially the black community overall, but we haven't figured this out with all the other forms of BS. So anyways, that's my vid. Excuse, the four-letter words. You know how passionate I can be sometimes. Take it easy. Let me know what you think. Everybody else, you know the drill. Pink Elephant out.